What's up guys, this is Ultimate iDevice Vids, and today in this video we're going to be doing a speed test between the iPhone 13 and the iPhone 6s. So at the time that I'm making this video, the iPhone 13 is the newest iPhone, and the iPhone 6s is the oldest iPhone currently supported by Apple's latest operating system, being iOS 15. And comparing the newest iPhone to the oldest iPhone that's currently supported by the latest iOS is a yearly tradition on this channel, so without any further ado, let's get right into it. First things first, both devices are at peak performance capability in regards to their battery health, and they're both running the latest version of iOS 15 as of recording this video. And we're going to kick things off with the boot up test. So with both devices connected to the same power strip, we're going to go ahead and power both of the phones off, and then we're going to turn the power strip on, powering on both of the iPhones at the same time. And I'm not going to cut anything out of this sequence. I want you guys to see the uncut boot up time. And as always, you should definitely keep in mind that a boot up test is not representative of how a device is going to perform in all areas. But as you can see here, the iPhone 13 boots up first, definitely noticeably faster than the 6s, a few good seconds ahead. And alright, so after the boot up test, we're going to move on to some app launching tests. So let's start off with some lighter applications. So no surprise, as you can see here, the iPhone 13 is faster, but as I often find myself saying when comparing older iPhones to newer iPhones, in day-to-day life, when you're not comparing them head-to-head like this, it's really not that big of a difference. And that's crazy impressive considering that the iPhone 6s was released all the way back in 2015. I think it's quite impressive that there's 5 whole generations of phones in between these two, and the 6s still holds up so well in 2021 going into 2022. And as we move on to some of these slightly heavier games, the speed gap between these two devices launching these applications definitely starts to widen a little bit, but once again, the speed on the 6s is totally manageable by my standards and probably by most people's standards. Certainly with the day-to-day applications we started with, and even with the slightly heavier games now. And the fact that iOS 15 even is able to run on the iPhone 6s, I think is just quite impressive. For a phone that's 6 years old to be able to run, again, the latest iOS version is very rare to find in the industry. And as we move on to the two heaviest applications in this app launching test, being PUBG and Asphalt 9, of course the gap between the iPhone 13 and the 6s is definitely much wider for these, as these are, very big console level games. And of course a bigger gap here is completely to be expected. So once the iPhone 13 fully launches up PUBG here, which it's about to do in just a second, we'll just speed through here until the 6s completes the launch as well. And in terms of Asphalt 9, this application always takes a very long time to load, especially on older devices. I mean, even devices that are just a few years old, this application always takes a while to load, so you can imagine the 6s definitely takes a while to load that app. So we'll just speed through here until one of them opens it up first, which of course without a doubt is the iPhone 13, and then followed by, of course, the 6s. And I'll also include a few stock applications like the camera here, which opened very quickly on both as to be expected, and Safari, and once again, same result. Pretty impressive on both. Next up, we're going to be doing a consecutive app launching test. So I'm going to be consecutively launching the same set of applications on both of these devices, and I'm going to show both of the devices doing this side by side to show any speed difference. So no surprise, of course, the iPhone 13 is just blazing through these applications without any hesitation at all, while the 6s is still keeping up quite well. And I can't help myself but repeat the same thing that I often say in videos like this. Of course, the difference here, even though it's very noticeable when these two devices are side by side, in day-to-day life, it's honestly not that big of a deal. I mean, certainly with the lighter applications that you're generally going to be using day-to-day on the 6s, you're not going to have any problem, as you can see. And once again, as I just said in the earlier app launching test, the bigger difference starts to show once we start to get into some of these slightly heavier games, and then of course, finally with the much heavier games at the end. But overall, I'd say pretty impressive, especially for a device that again was released all the way back in 2015. And alright, so we'll just go ahead and speed through the remainder of the consecutive app launching test here. Of course, without a doubt, the iPhone 13 finishes it first, of course, followed by the iPhone 6s. And real quick, following the consecutive app launching test, I'm just going to go back into all the applications that we opened to see which applications remained open in the background as a little bit of a RAM management check. So the iPhone 13 has 4 gigabytes of RAM and the 6s has 2 gigabytes of RAM. And no surprise here, the iPhone 13 was able to keep every single application open, and the 6s was able to keep some of the lighter applications from the beginning of the test open, like Instagram, Twitter, Amazon, SoundCloud, Gmail, and Chrome. However, other than those apps, all the other apps were fully closed, so they needed to be completely relaunched. So no huge surprise here, but I did want to check in on the RAM management real quick. And alright, next up, I want to run a biometrics test. So of course, using Face ID on the the iPhone 13 and Touch ID on the iPhone 6S. As you can see, both unlocking mechanisms just blazing fast, so absolutely nothing to complain about there. Although I must say I would definitely appreciate having Touch ID back on newer iPhones, so hopefully that's something that we get in future generations. And next, real quick, I just want to load a few web pages in Safari, and of course it's definitely worth mentioning that web page loading tests entirely depend on the speed of your internet connection, so definitely take this with a grain of salt. But I'll just load up a few web pages here and you can see both devices do a fine job, really nothing to complain about at all. But once again, it all depends on your internet connection and of course the contents of the web pages that you're loading. And in terms of scrolling speed, as you can see here, just on apple.com, it's perfectly fine on both, but as I just said, it entirely depends on the content of the web page you're scrolling as well. And lastly, we're going to conclude with some benchmark tests. So we'll start off with Geekbench, and as to be expected, of course, once again, there being 5 generations in between these two devices, a considerable improvement in the numbers on the iPhone 13. And lastly, I want to run an Antutu benchmark as well. And of course, same thing to report with the Antutu numbers as well. But all in all, as you can see, the iPhone 6S still holds up in 2021 going into 2022 as what I consider to be a perfectly usable device in terms of performance for the average person. Honestly, the biggest complaint that I hear from 6S users has nothing to do with the performance of the device, it's just the battery life. So depending on how you use your iPhone, you may have an issue with the battery life on the 6S, but again, in this video, we're just talking about the performance, the power of the iPhone 6S. And in that regard, just considering how long Apple's been supporting this and how long the device has been around, I think it's pretty impressive. As always, if you guys are using either of these devices, let me know down below in the comments section how the performance has been for you. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.